The annual edition of the Nebraska Soybean Management Field Days taking place around Nebraska. And one of the topics is talking about the farm finances. And to do that and talk about what she has talked about with producers this week is Tina Barrett with Nebraska Farm Business. Got that one right. So, all right, Tina, let's talk about it. Last couple of years were big years. We've had some changes. It looks like 2015 and beyond, at least for the short term, going to be some challenges on the farm when it comes to those finances. What are you telling folks here?
Yeah, I think it is. We've seen really 10 record years for profitability, and especially in the crop sector, we've seen that dropping a little faster than the livestock. So certainly some hurt out there. But it's nothing that we haven't dealt with before, and I think that's something that's real important to remember is it was just 10 years ago when this was normal. But for those producers especially who haven't been farming for 10 years, this is certainly something new. And for everybody else, it's hard to remember because it wasn't fun times.
Let's talk about that first. The young producer, those that have been there less than a decade. They're facing these challenges for the first time and thinking, well, farming is easy. We have those higher prices and buy the new pickup, buy the new house, buy a lot of good equipment, and now here we are.
That's right. And it's really we're going to see a big divide in the producers who really reserved a lot of that profitability in their net worth versus those who have spent a lot of it. And it's really tough when you don't have a lot of a cushion like those producers, those young guys do. So it's real important to watch your spending, both farm and non-farm, because those non-farm costs can get just as deadly to an operation as farm costs. So it's real important we watch all that and understand that no two operations are exactly the same. And what mom and dad do is different than what we can do, and what the neighbor's doing is different than our situation as well.
I noticed in the presentations, one of the things you're looking at is as farmers continue to look for that extra bushel or two to maybe look at the big picture and are adding some of those input costs worth that return that you may not be getting that bigger return that you really expected.
That's right. And it's so much fun to grow a big crop. And unfortunately, everybody's growing a big crop this year, which is causing that price to come down. But we need to look at those management decisions, those production costs, and make sure that they still make sense. Because when we're talking about $15 beans or $14 beans and $9 beans, those decisions are very different. And I always use a real simple example of using $50 an acre for fertilizer, getting 5 extra bushels. Well, that's great as long as the price is more than $10, but it doesn't make sense to spend 50 if we're only going to get 30 or 40 back.
Well, as we look to the future, I suppose there's no easy answers, but there are some answers and some solutions to get through this time, or if we're back to this being the new normal.
Right. And I think that the biggest thing that producers have to figure out is we talk a lot about averages, but there is no average farm. So you're either on above average or you're below average, and you need to know where you're at. Because we've got operations who still have cost production, in that $11, $12 a bushel range. Those operations might be able to hold tight, keep doing what they're doing, and get through this tough time period. But on the other side of average is some high-cost producers, maybe even in that $18 to $20 a bushel range. For those operations, we need to know that now and then start making some really tough decisions and figuring out how to cut that back so that we don't get to the end of the year and realize we've lost too much money.
One of the things also that you've been doing some research on is the cash rent situation and really putting a hard pencil to it. And is it time maybe to maybe not necessarily back off, but really focus on maybe smaller acreage to be a better manager, if you will, rather than continue to expand and just try to outgrow the situation by paying these higher cash rents? Because it looks like we may be another year or so before those rents really do come down.
Yeah, and it's tough because we look at actual farm numbers, and so we know that there's a lot of cash rents that we don't hear about, those low rents that are still reasonable, and those are still out there, and we're going to be able to keep doing that and still keep making money at that. On the other side of that spectrum, there's the ones that have been making the news in the $300 and $400 and $500 an acre rent. It's hard when there's just not much gross income to spend over half of it on land. And it's a tough decision to make. It's not as simple as saying, I don't have enough income this year, I can't rent it, because the opportunity of ever farming that ground again is probably very slim if you give it up. That's just what history tells us. So it's a long-term decision that we need to make. And it's a decision that those producers who are in a healthy financial position with that debt-to-asset ratio in that 20% range maybe can hold on to that ground a little bit longer, hoping for that long-term income potential, than somebody who's highly leveraged. And they're going to have to make that decision to let that ground go a little faster.
All right, Tina, so as we look, we're a few weeks away now from harvest. After harvest, probably a good time to sit down with family and with whoever's in the operation, only look at farm expenses, non-farm expenses, and how to kind of make it through as we look at projections down the road. Looks like we're not necessarily break the bank when it comes to commodity prices.
Right. I think it is. It's just going to be tough decisions. I'd love to see the opportunity to be able to sit down with a producer and their agronomist and their crop marketing guy and see if we can pull this team together to make this work. That doesn't work very well with schedules of those of us in that business. But it really is going to take a combined effort from a lot of those consultants that producers are working with in figuring out ways to bring this cost down. And really it makes a lot more sense that we cut a little bit off of every cost rather than trying to find a solution in one or two costs.
All right, Tina, folks want to talk more with you about some of these situations. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, our website's got all of our information. That's probably the easiest thing to do. So it's www.nfbi.net for Nebraska Farm Business, Inc.
All right, Tina, thanks a lot. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
Tina Barrett with Nebraska Farm Business has joined us. We've been talking finances on the farm. That's the Ag View. I'm Ken Rogers.